All right, folks, let's go ahead and take a look here at stacks. And just before we do, we always look at Bitcoin first, just to go ahead and get a quick baseline on the market. And if you're new to the channel, I'm not a financial advisor. This is for educational purposes only. I have a trading community. Feel free to reference that link in the description below for my Patreon account. Awesome, awesome stuff. That's all I can say. I've got an instructional video if you're curious what that is. Now, moving forward here, taking a look at Bitcoin, we're just going to take a quick peek at the one-day chart and look at stacks here next, because again, any good trader will look at both currencies to understand specifically the correlation, but also just how things are going, because Bitcoin does control them all. It is a one coin to rule them all. Now, on the one-day chart, we can see obviously the price is above both moving averages. Fair enough, right? We also can see that the price is rejected twice on right at about 56,000. So that's the new resistance. Current support level is 53,800, and below that, of course, we have 52,600. That being said, we've got two nice secondary support levels here, or basically some support channels if the price were to retrace. That is a potentiality, of course, because tomorrow is Monday. Monday is a very common sell-off day based on the fact that the whales are taking their profits, considering that the price usually increases in a bull market over the weekend. Because consumers like you and I are driving the price up slowly and steady, then Monday, Tuesday comes around, and they're usually red days. Not to say that's going to happen specifically, but based on the overextension here from Bitcoin recently, I wouldn't be surprised if we were to see that. We also have somewhat of an ascending wedge pattern forming here as well. So we might see a breakout in the next couple of days to the upside. If so, fantastic. My goal would be to kind of maybe try to consider buying closer to support. So that's just kind of my thing. I really like buying closer to established support levels. We can see 53,800 is a pretty strong support. All right, so go ahead and move on to stacks. Let's go ahead and take a look at the one-day chart and work our way down. I was looking at this earlier here today, and there's some interesting stuff going on with this. Now, first of all, I did previously mark we have some all-time highs. In other words, the all-time high, of course, is about $2.85, but where the one-day candlestick closed, it's about 270. As well as we also have a secondary at about 256. So 256 to 270 is kind of a resistance channel right now. So bear in mind it got rejected out when it tried to break through that. That does happen, of course, considering how high it legged up, but that is essentially still a reality. Okay, so we gotta be respectful of that. But one good thing here is we do have a nice little support level here that was tested about 4 or 5 times at 168. Okay, so 168 should be a nice little support. RSI is up over 70. That's pretty standard for a coin that just ramped up like this for 2 days straight, but not in terrible shape. In other words, it's not like shooting up past 90. It's still kind of hovering around, upper 70s, low 80s. So that being said, we could still see a continuation. It may also go sideways for some time and then ramp back up. That would be fantastic. We'll look at shorter time frames to identify that, but that's essentially what we're looking at here. We did have a MACD convergence here on the 2nd, and I'll just quickly mark that just so we can kind of take a quick look at the Ishimoku cloud and see if there's a correlation there. Okay, so taking a quick look at the 4-hour here, we can see we had a golden cross, which is pretty standard for a lot of coins right now. That likely drove the price up here. It's an interesting phenomenon, but it has a pretty big impact, right? Because it doesn't happen too often, and the reason why it's impactful is the fact that we have a shorter time frame intersecting with a larger time frame in an upward fashion. Therefore, the 50 is intersecting with the 200 on the 4-hour chart. That could cause the price to increase there. And what might have happened as well, again, we don't know this, but there might have been a short squeeze setup. That does happen sometimes, but it's less likely in coins like these. Generally speaking, that probably had a lot to do with it. That was likely the fundamental catalyst. Also notice as well here, we've got a convergence on the MACD as well, right around the same time. So literally 4 hours before the price spiked up, the MACD was converging. We had a golden cross. It's essentially that's a double rainbow, for lack of a better term. So those things kind of came to fruition, drove the price up, and it still keeps pushing and pushing. Now we see a bit of a retracement here so far on the 4-hour. We'll look at the shorter time frame to identify, but it's pretty standard for this to happen. And I do like this little increase though, because even though it ramped up and it sold off, we are seeing somewhat of a staircase pattern. Okay. Now again, it depends on how you look at it. Shorter time frames help us identify that a little better, but that's essentially what we're seeing so far. So I don't see anything adverse at all about STX so far, stacks. Only thing, of course, is the fact that it's overextended for obvious reasons, and it might actually come retracing back down. When we have an increase, let's go ahead and see what that is. In a 24-hour period, again, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 candlesticks, right? 7 times 4. That's essentially a full 1-day candle, right? So if, outside the 1-day candlestick, we can see here that this increased in 24-hour period at about 83%. Okay. Now, traditionally speaking, most increases in crypto that go up that much, just say 83%, they're going to be cut in half. You're going to see a 41.5% resolution at the end of the next 24 hours. Therefore, I would expect the price to average out somewhere around $2. That'd be my guess. Again, that's just kind of, statistics aren't 100%. What 80% of statistics are made up on the spot, right? There's no guarantees there, right? But in my experience, my 15 years that I've been trading, I can see and tell you that there's a common correlation between a sharp increase and a sharp decrease. It usually resolves itself somewhere about halfway. We can look at the Fibonacci as well to kind of see what that looks like, but I can tell you it's going to probably sync up pretty well. Looking at the 1 hour chart, this is the healthy run that I was referring to. And in other words, when I say healthy, it's not awesome that it ramps up and then sells off almost immediately. But what is healthy, it has a period of consolidation in between every increase. So again, just to kind of drive the point home, got this nice little staircase pattern. It's not perfect, but it is continuing. So there's a possibility we might see a continuation to the upside here, or if nothing else, it may just average out right there at resistance and keep testing that to eventually break. So there's a possibility there. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Ichimoku cloud and quickly identify. Not much to really note here. Of course, when we got a sharp increase like that, the cloud has a tendency of, being, I wouldn't say inaccurate. It's just that it's hard to really know when the price is just still above the cloud. There's nothing else to really understand. So if you're new to the channel, that may not make a lot of sense, but generally speaking, the price comes up above the Ichimoku cloud. It is essentially considered a buy signal, below the cloud, sell signal. So just keep that in mind. And with this here, if we can see this, we have essentially the price has been well above. So what could happen is the price will average out and continue over. And when it travels into the cloud, at that point, we'll understand more. If it were to break and drop below the cloud, we want to hold off and wait until it breaks above again. It's kind of like the law of averages. There's moving averages that influence the Ichimoku cloud, and that kind of helps us understand kind of where we're at. But again, right now, being overextended, we're going to see the cloud further away, and it's not really telling us much. Let's take a look at TD sequential. We should have a reset here, which we do, and we reached a 9. So if you're new to the channel, of course, as well, just to clarify, Ichimoku cloud is important on the 1 hour chart. Equally as important is the TD sequential, and what we're looking for is a 9. When we see a 9, that basically means we're likely to see either a decrease or a retracement. Or possibly even consolidation, right? So with this, we have a 9 right here, so we could see it consolidate. I'm speculating we're going to see about 7 more hours worth of a leg down to probably average closer to 2. Yeah. Now, speaking of 2, let's go ahead, now that we're on a shorter time frame, let's go ahead and mark some support and resistance levels. So we can see it spent a decent amount of time right here. Coincidentally, that is like right at about $2, $2.02. So 202 would be the next major support. So we'll take a look at this here again later in the week, but for now, I would say that that is essentially what we're looking at for potential support. So if you were to consider taking entry, be cautious, be mindful. In other words, move your stop loss higher if you're in the profit, right? And typically the best practice is to move your stop loss up to the most previous resistance level, which is the new support. Therefore, right here at about 168 would be a good place to go ahead and place your stop loss. And maybe consider taking some profit now and then buy the dip when it comes back lower. That's usually the good key consideration for me that I like to help infer with my patrons to kind of recommend that we do that. Now, if you are new to the channel as well, or perhaps you are not and you haven't joined my Patreon trading community, really awesome group, feel free to jump in there and see if you like it, because what we do is I share all of my trades with my community members, and we just talk openly about best practice, and everyone's learning a lot. We're growing rapidly, and it's a really fun, awesome experience. So I can tell you I have about an 85% average success rate with my trades, and I can confidently tell you that you'd be in good hands if you decide to go that route. I have an instructional video in the link in the description below. And with that, I'm going to wish you a fantastic rest of your day. We'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Have a good one. Thank you.